Okay. So yeah. So right. So last week then, what I did is I showed you some techniques on the abstract painting that we've been doing. So I know that a lot of you are still working on those. So we will be continuing with those. But if you do find that you've finished, if you've finished everything, then there is some more stuff for you to try out, and it'll be looking at light and stuff, and impressionism. And you'll see if you go to the website, there is a button on there now which takes you to the drive where there's a whole range of some impressionist paintings that you can work from this week and next week. But I do, as far as I'm aware, I think most of you are still working on your abstract paintings that we've been doing of the dancers, where we looked at composition, how to create the composition. I did say that I would do a bit more on colour pencils as well. I only touched on it last week, so I thought I would just talk a little bit more about that. And actually the picture that I'm working on now uses pencils, but it also uses a little bit of acrylic, but with a watercolor sort of technique attached to it as well, on watercolor paper. But I'll show you that in just a few seconds. So I'll show you what I've got on here. So you remember all this sort of stuff where we've been looking at how to use a line to break up the background of our compositions, and then how to, of course, use those different sections to practice your techniques with blending, layering, doing glazes of colour back over the top of your pictures as well. So we've been having a lot of fun doing that sort of thing. If anyone is struggling a little bit with the acrylic paints, or you want me to show you how to do a blend after I've finished talking and that, then please let me know. I'll do it anyway. I'll do a couple of blends and things after I've talked a little bit about how I've been using colour pencils today. So just let me know. If there's anything you're stuck on or want to ask, then of course I'll go over that with you. So there was that one, and then I've also obviously talked a little bit about how to use these techniques here, using a palette knife or a brush to create almost like an impasto technique, but this kind of stippled daubing technique to create colour onto a picture as well as a bit of texture. So we've had a lot of fun playing around with those things, and I still haven't quite finished the painting that I've been doing on that, because I've been quite keen to sort of start some new stuff with you. Okay, so I'll just get rid of all these for a second. Hopefully, yay, bring up these. So this picture over here of the little girl is the one that I'm working on right now. And what I'm doing is I've drawn her out, and I'm using colour pencils, and I've created a watercolour background for my next layer of colours to go on as well. So I've just been playing around with that idea today, but the kind of theme I thought of was that obviously we've been doing figurative work, but putting that into a lovely landscape, and also focusing on how the light and shadows are falling within a picture, I thought it would be a really good subject to have a closer look at during the last couple of lessons before lesson 10, before the end of this series of 10 lessons. So have a look on the website if you want to find some more. They're easy to download and print out if you're interested in doing that. Okay, so I'll go over to my desk. So this is the picture, as you're aware, that I've been working on and I was doing with you last week. Since last week, I've also added some colour pencil over these kinds of areas just over here. And I've been using, some of you will be very familiar with this because I've shown it before. I talked over here about using hatching techniques to create extra texture over the top of your acrylic backgrounds. And over this area you can see there's a bit of red just over on this area. So I've used a bit of obviously a red colour pencil back over the top of the acrylic areas. So on top of acrylic, colour pencil seems to work really nicely. It allows some of the colour that you put on already from the acrylics to come through. And also when you use one of these tools, this one's a burnisher actually, but you can get a special blending pencil as well, which helps to smooth out your colours a little bit too. So I'll just do a little bit with that over the top of an area. I'm going to turn, let's see if I can just bring that down. So I've got this nice purple colour here, and on top of this layer of pink I can blend the colour out really nicely. And then I could also use, let's see, I'm going to get a bit of orange actually, a little bit a yellowy colour actually, a bit of yellow. You can put that over the top. So when you can mix the colours really nicely with colour pencil back over the top of the acrylics. And then we can use a burnishing tool. Let me find a burnisher. There it is. So it's a blender actually, I should say. The blender. And what it does is it moves the pigment in the pencil around really nicely and helps you to blend and smooth off the colours really well. But it creates a much richer effect over the top of your work with the pencil, and it's nice because you've got a bit of control with a nice pointy pencil. So I realise that a lot of you of course haven't got these, but if at some point you want to try one out, they're well worth buying. This one's from Derwent, it's just called a blender, and then we've also got a burnisher which creates kind of a smoother finish on the top of the work as well. All right, so colour pencils over the top of your work, that's something to try out. It's really nice, it makes a really lovely rich effect. You can see where I've done it in other places, as I was saying before. So with the next picture that I'm working on, oh, there was something I want to show you, which was this crazy painting that I've also been doing today. I've taken this quite a bit further, as you can see, and I've also used colour pencils on this one as well. So last week when I was in class, I was using acrylic paint to bring this quite scary statue out of the background of the picture. So I've used acrylic paint over here, and even though it was a white acrylic paint, some of the greens and blues that I put underneath there came back through, and then I've used some highlights back over the top with another layer of white acrylic paint as well. So this picture was originally done with a biro pen, and then after that I did the washes, very thin washes of acrylic colour back over the top, so you could see through to the biro, and then following that I used the acrylic to bring out the details in the statue, the scary statue over here. I call it scary because the black bits coming down on her eyes were actually how it looked in the graveyard that it must have been photographed in. And then following that, today I've also used a soft colouring pencil to do the highlights on this statue over here. So, and I'll just show you how well over the top of the acrylic and the biro this goes. It's really nice. So you get a really strong white bit of colour on there, and then we've got again the blender. So the blender helps to smooth off that white colour as well, but of course you can use other colour pencils if you want to. I'm just using this as a highlighter. bring that out. So it almost has the same effect as the acrylic paint. The acrylic paint is a bit smoother and perhaps blends a little bit better with the colours underneath, but it works really nicely. And then the other thing, I can't remember if I showed everybody this last week, but I was using a palette knife over the top of the background, and you can see these little bits that come over the top of the face are actually where I've used the palette knife and dragged the paint over the surface. I can't remember if I showed everybody that, but there it is. So I've applied these colours going directionally down across the statues to create this, because if you remember, originally these pictures were kind of mossy and things, weren't they? So I've used this kind of roughness of the palette knife to create these textured areas of colour back over the top of the picture. And I just kept going, really. So this is why it's been worked over so much during different demonstrations that I've done over the last few weeks and today. But there we are. So that's that one. And now we go over to this one, which is our girl. I've got quite a bit to do, particularly on the background at the moment. But this one I've sketched out using colour pencil. So I started off with a blue colour pencil, a bit like this one here. So this one is a dark indigo, I think it is. Can't read it anymore because it's quite an old pencil. So I've literally sketched that straight out. You could, I mean, I did suggest earlier that, you know, use a grid if you're worried about getting the accuracy and things. I've just literally gone for it and sketched this out. The background is, and you could be mistaken for thinking the background on this is watercolour, and it could be, but I've actually used an acrylic background on here. Plenty of water and plenty of couple of different colours, but kept it really kind of wet and very loose, so that you get the same effect as you would with watercolour. So the watercolours kind of blend, or the acrylics blend into each other really nicely. And then a classic trick that watercolourists often use is to scrunch up a piece of tissue paper or kitchen towel and dab over the surface just to give a little bit of texture. You can see on this there's quite a lot of depth in here. I've got a copy of it up here on the screen. It's much better colours than my photocopy, but you can see how much heavy shadow and things there are on here, and lots of texture. So I probably will, even though I've got this lovely background, I'll be probably working back into it with my brushes and more opaque and thick colour, because I just can't resist all these lovely flowers and things in the foreground and the ones she's holding. And actually you can see on here that I've already been doing that a little bit just over here on these flowers. Not refined or anything like that, I'm just literally dabbing it down. Before then I'll work into it a little bit more. One other thing I should say is that on the face here, some of the tone and shadow or the colour on the face wasn't quite the way I wanted it, and it still isn't. I've still got a bit of work to do, but I did it all in colour pencil, but then I started adding acrylic back over the top again as well. So there's the, you know, if you want to be flexible with an art material, then acrylic is definitely really good. As you can see, I've got watercolor techniques on here. I'm applying thicker color back over color pencil as well. So it's well worth having a little play around with these techniques. Okay, so today, continuing with your work that you've been doing. If you need help, please ask, and I'll show you a few things if I can, or give you some help with your particular piece. And I'll do a blend. I'll do a new blend in a second of a couple of colours, just to remind people of how to do that if that's what you need. So I continue working on, for the most part during this week, I continued working on this beautiful picture of a girl in a field of flowers. So it's not a usual thing that I paint, actually, so it's quite unusual for me to do this sort of thing. But nevertheless, it's very interesting to play around with mixing pencils and acrylic together. Something I used to do quite a lot with abstract landscapes some time ago. But it's very nice to put some colour down, put some marks down, blend some colour pencils, and then apply acrylics back over the top. And then minutes later, apply some colour pencils back over the top of that. So I really did have quite a good time playing around with this technique today. And with the background and things, I went for a very loose approach to the way that I was applying the field of flowers in the background, because I'm quite fond of loose mark making or brush strokey sort of techniques in the background, so or on this field. So I've been very loose, but all the time referring back to the photograph that I'm working from, or in this case the painting, print off of the painting. You can see the original at the back. One thing to keep an eye on is the tonal quality. So you've got a very light area towards the top, which I kept going back to, and I kept applying more colour to as we progress through this part of the lesson. And then I put larger and smaller marks on. I've applied different blues. You can see a few different blues going on there as I move down towards the bottom. I was quite keen to sort of start from the bottom and move forward to the front. Often in a landscape, it's a nice idea to work from the back towards the front of a landscape, so you can get this kind of layered effect. But having said that, I do like to hop around the picture and say, oh, I spotted something, so I'll go back and add some more details back over the top of it. So you'll see me here, you can see me working back over the colour pencil with a bit of paint, and I often use my finger just to blend or blur things out a little bit as well. Another enjoyable part of this was the challenge of doing those little fingers and hands, because one of the hands fingers is in quite an unusual kind of position as she sort of gently grips the stem of that bunch of flowers, or stems of that those bunch of flowers over there. So that was really enjoyable to do as well. And as you're working on this, you'll notice all the colours perhaps need to be darker or richer on the picture. So I do go back and work back into the skin tones and so forth as we go onwards. Although I was quite pleased at the end of this session how nice and soft and subtle I'd managed to get the face. And that's one nice quality about using colour pencils, is the grainy quality that you can get when you apply the colour pencil over the top of lots of layers, or on watercolour paper in this case. And then another thing that I do, and I'm not sure if I've done that yet, but I do actually add a little bit of a gentle glaze around the hairline of a face, which helps to soften the hair down just a little bit around the face too. So you can see now I'm bringing in some of the foreground areas, applying different layers of deep greens and browns on there. And what I hope to do perhaps next week is add some more detail when we think about those lovely flowers that I was talking about earlier at the front of the picture. And one thing to bear in mind is, if you're working from a printout from your computer, particularly like this is an inkjet print that I've used to copy from. If you refer back to perhaps the computer screen, you can see the colours are much more vivid often. So I was referring to, or just looking back
at the original painting on screen here as I was painting, and so I started off quite softly with a lot of the colours. There's me putting in the little bit of glaze around the hair. So the colours were quite pale to begin with, but then I kept looking at the one on screen. You can see here, I noticed how much more vivid and bright the colours actually were too. So I keep going back to those as I progress through the picture. So here's me referring and just talking about a painting, the last painting we've been doing on composition. I didn't finish off the painting because I thought, well, if anyone needs me to demonstrate again any of the little bits that I've done, I can do that. But certainly one of the things I enjoyed talking about today was the fact that you can work with colour pencils over the top of acrylic, and acrylic can be used for watercolour as well. So thank you very much and have a lovely week. Bye bye now.